was like, whoa, what is going on here? And then they went on to do a very good skills session and a fitness session and everything. But I remember just thinking, even at the lower levels of rugby, the coach blows the whistle and you run in, and there's an urgency and there's an element of all buying into a culture.
Hello amateurs, welcome to episode 15 of the Amateur Rugby Podcast, here to help soothe your Sunday morning hangover with some vibrant rugby chat about the grassroots of the game. I'm your host Tim, and today I'm in, well, as you listen to this, I'll probably be on a boat somewhere in the Arabian Sea, enjoying the Nomad Cruise, which is an incredible floating conference for digital nomads. Only a few more games for people to go before Christmas. I'm sure you're all looking forward to a break, but also hoping to lay down the marker of a big performance before signing off for the first half of the season. Hope you enjoyed last week's episode with Ben Mercer. He has some unique experiences and insights, particularly around lower league French rugby. Go and have a listen to his episode if you haven't already, and get his book for Christmas. You won't regret it. But my guest this week is Colm Hannon. Colm and I are former teammates at Esher RFC and both fully paid up members of the Front Row Union. He is one of the most interesting and engaging characters that I've encountered in the game, and I was very excited to sit down and chat with him. The interview was recorded in September of 2019, and we shared some stories about playing together, Colm's early rugby days, and really dug deep into the role of business and business people in rugby. It's an absolute joy to be able to give you Colm Hannon. Colm Hannon, welcome to the Amateur Rugby Podcast.
Thank you very much, Tim. It's nice to be here.
Very nice to be here in Galway, Ireland.
Yes, and nice to have you here, and thank you very much for travelling over to Ireland.
It's been my absolute pleasure. We've had a banging weekend. It's been non-stop west of Ireland shenanigans all weekend, really. So maybe you just give the listeners a quick rundown of the fun that we've had this weekend.
So Friday you managed to run out of batteries and lose your sat-nav and get lost in the middle of Ireland somewhere.
This is true.
And you turned up well past 11 o'clock, which you were worried that the pub wasn't going to be open, and you were pleasantly surprised to see that our local pub doesn't really ever close until the last person goes home. We had a few pints of Guinness. There was a bit of a sing-song and a few storytellers in the country pub. We went surfing the next morning after a 5 a.m. finish.
It was kind of the afternoon by the time we got out there, but yeah.
That's true, actually. Yeah. Sorry, it just felt like the morning. And then we went and watched a hurling match, your first hurling match.
First ever, yeah.
Yeah, so I obviously love my rugby. I'm a rugby man, but I am, I'm a Galway man, and hurling is in our blood here. So we watched a game there. And then we went out he joined us for a family memorial evening. And then what did we do on Sunday? Oh, Sunday we went fishing. Yeah. So we were out in a boat for 7 hours. During which we listened on radio to we talked about all kinds of different things, but we listened to the last quarter of the All-Ireland football final where Dublin and Kerry drew. So it's funny, actually, two rugby lads, quite big rugby lads in a boat, and rugby came up a few times, but actually we were talking about lots of other things. Yeah. So, it's very good. Yeah, we had to be careful on occasion that we didn't move too fast in that boat, because with our weight, it wasn't particularly stable in there. Yeah, we actually had to move the seat so that it didn't go to one side and we end up in the water. Yeah. But I was very impressed, mate. You did really well.
Thanks, mate.
Caught your first couple of pikes, didn't you?
Did, yeah. Very happy with myself. I've had a great weekend, mate, and I feel part Irish now, which is nice.
Very good.
But let's rewind. Let's go back to when we first met, which was playing for Esher in the championship. Yeah. And I turned up there, and my first game was Leeds Carnegie away. Mm. And there's a few things I remember from that day. One, you were playing tight head. Mm. So I remember walking around the pitch beforehand, and you could probably see like the stars in my eyes looking at this massive Headingley pitch and stand, and I'd never played on anywhere like that before. and you just kind of walked over and just kind of went, "Oh, it's all right here, isn't it?"
Yeah.
So kind of a calming influence. But before that, I remember going to Headingley on the bus beforehand, and you gave us a little lowdown of what the city of Leeds had to offer with your historical insight. So I wonder if you'd like maybe tell the people what it is that you do on away trip buses.
I got into it later in my career when I'd been to places a few times. So I'd just pick up the history of the place and a few interesting facts, and then get on the speaker at the front of the bus. And funny enough, you'd hear the lads later that night out in the nightclub, telling some girl the same facts I heard on the bus. But it was good. It just made it a bit different, but interesting.
Yeah, I remember when you came on that first time, because it was obviously my first ever away trip with Esher, so I had no clue what was going on.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this is nice.
Yeah.
It sounds interesting. And everyone started laughing and giggling, and then it was only sort of later that I realised it was you.
Honestly, it's funny now. I'm 42 now. I'm retired like maybe 9 years, and I actually forget some of these little things.
Yeah.
So, when you sit down with people like yourself that you played with, and they bring back memories. So I actually totally forgot that I used to do that.
But it was good. It's good. Okay, so a couple of other memories that I have of us. One was I used to have 2 pairs of rugby boots. I used to have my match boots and my training boots. Mm. And I remember it was the second season I was there, I think, and it was just after Christmas, and I got a new pair of training boots for Christmas, and they were like neon yellow. Ooh. And you took a bit of a disliking to them.
Did I?
When I turned up to training. You claimed I was peacocking.
I don't know about that.
And it might be overkill, but it felt like you were chasing me around the pitch trying to kill me.
No, that's not true at all. That's not true at all. It's just welcoming you to the club.
I'd already been there a year.
Well, I was welcoming the new,
the
more cosmopolitan kind of peacocking you. No, good mate. We had some great times. Like I remember one thing I remember at you coming to Esher was you just brought such an enthusiasm and an energy to the whole thing. And you had played in a lower league previous to that, and it very much like you're traveling or all the new things that you do. You embraced it, and you just really wanted to succeed, and it was you just were hungry. So, that was the interesting thing about it. I think in a weird way, I was my hunger was waning. And
right,
if you obviously. For any of the audience listening, there's not many people can say that about me very often, that my hunger wanes. But you do get to a point in your career when you just know that you're just not as good as you used to be. And I think that I was really enjoying my rugby, but the body wasn't willing anymore.
Yeah.
So there's a friend of mine, he phoned me up once from the gym, he was a firefighter, and he said, Colm, you said something to me a few years ago, and he said, I've just realised that it's true. He said, I'm in the gym here trying to do deadlifts. And he said, you once said to me that after you get past 30, your body just buggers off on you. And I think it's true, you can only go for so long. But, and then you just have to start enjoying the game in different ways, But we were very lucky. I think we were at Esher at the pinnacle of the club's history. Playing at the highest level in the championship. We got relegated, and then we went and won. We won the National One.
National One, yeah.
And that was great fun. And we had such a nice fella at the helm, Mike Schmidt, who used to make ice hockey analogies all the time.
Which none of us understood.
No, but it didn't really matter. The most important thing was we knew he cared.
Yeah, for sure. Now, there's one other training ground incident that I want to bring up as well, because there's a similar thread here. It's only happened to me a handful of times in my career, whether training or playing. It was a one-on-one tackling drill, and they lined us up in groups by position. So you got the ball in a 10-metre run-up in about a 2-metre channel, and I tried to tackle you, and there was this moment of slow motion when we connected, and then I was like, oh, I've got him, but then I started going backwards over my own head with arms and legs waving all over the place.
Oh God!
And I just remember as I was landing backwards on the floor, I could hear your giggle. as you carried on running past me.
Yeah, but Tim, as you know, those first 10 metres were never the problem for me, but it was the 10 metres afterwards, I couldn't keep going for. So, pre-season was never my friend, but, yeah. No, it's good. Like, I think those little things, it's funny what people remember from their club times, because everyone has selective memories, and there are things that another person may never remember. For example, I remember one training session, and you talk about me boshing you, but I remember me being boshed by a centre from Quins who was on loan, Ross Chisholm.
Right.
And I remember I just couldn't get past him. It wasn't that he boshed me, but I couldn't get past him. And I just thought to myself, that's it, my career is over. I'm ending now. So I'm just going to park it. And he was so good. And obviously he's a great player, Ross Chisholm. So, but
there's no shame in that, really.
Obviously he's going very low around the ankles, but whatever it was. But that was a moment, and I'll guarantee you, Ross Chisholm will never remember that training session because it meant nothing to him. But
everything to you.
It was elephant's graveyard time for me. Yeah.
Okay, well let's rewind a little bit back to school days, I guess, because you mentioned earlier that hurling's in your blood, and that was your sport of choice as a schoolboy.
Yeah. I described it like the Happy Gilmore movie, where Happy Gilmore loves ice hockey, but he's not very good at it, and he happens to be good at golf. I loved hurling, but I don't think I was very good at it. And at the age of 14 or 15, I remember playing at school, and one of the priests came out onto the pitch and took my hurl and my helmet off me and walked me down to the rugby pitch and said, "That's the game for you." So
that was it.
Yeah, and look, it's funny looking back, because I was slow for rugby. I didn't know how, I would have been extremely slow for hurling, but loved it, and I love to watch it still. But no, rugby's my game, and I think the thing that made me fall in love with rugby was the coaches and the people that were around it. We had such amazing characters at school who were like, so I went to a rugby school. So I do think that makes a big difference. If you go to school, it's either, it could be a soccer school, a hurling school, rugby school. I do think you're influenced by having that kind of enthusiasm, especially from the coaches. But I remember being at school and for games during, and it was on the curriculum that they had to do soccer. But they would only do soccer when the weather was at its absolutely worst and most atrocious. And I remember, and I don't really want to get anyone in trouble here, but I remember my PE teacher driving his car out to the halfway line for soccer, and us playing in a hurricane, basically, playing soccer. And then when there was a free, he would beat the horn, and then we would look to the touchline, and then he would turn the indicator on to show which way the free kick went. And that was our experience of football. But then when it came to rugby, everything was lined out. All the drills were there. He was super enthusiastic. So we were definitely led, in the right direction. And I think our school won, the Connacht final, several years in a row when I was there. So it definitely helps.
Yeah, for sure. Now rugby's. I talk a lot about this on the podcast. Rugby's incredible for making connections and friendships and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And as such, we ended up in New Zealand together, along with a few other people, Goldie and Stitch, for the New Zealand tour in 2017. And that
was amazing.
Yeah, had a little drive around in an RV.
Yeah, it was amazing. I think it was 22 nights. You'd come off the back of some other world's tour.
Yeah,
and
it's a bit longer for me.
And you had been travelling around New Zealand on your own in some sort of a smaller camper van, and then we all got promoted to Airbnb and hotels and eventually a big camper van, which was amazing. But I have to say that was, like, I don't want to get into trouble with any of my Irish friends here, but it was the most beautiful country I'd ever been to. I just remember driving around every corner. Or may I say, you were probably driving around every corner. I think there was one day when I'd fallen asleep from the night. No, I hadn't woken up from the night before, and you and Goldie had gone and had a whole day shopping around the town.
We'd done everything. We changed the water tanks. We'd gone and picked up the match day tickets from the hotel, which, by the way, was the hotel where the All Blacks were staying.
Yeah.
So we saw the entire All Blacks squad. we went somewhere else as well and saw Sean O'Brien and Stephen Ferris walking down the street, all the while having really loud music playing. Got back. Oh, we've gone to the gym before that as well. Got back to the car park in Wellington Rugby Club.
Yeah.
At which point we thought, right, well, we're going to have to do some kind of film here just to, just to be silly and share it on social media. At which point you woke up. And it was like 1:30 in the afternoon. Maybe.
I can't believe you didn't wake me up. I missed out on half my day of my holiday. I want my money back. It was so good. But do you remember, obviously the atmosphere in those stadiums was just incredible. And, the second test in the rain, and Sonny Bill got sent off, and obviously the Lions, clinched it. And that was incredible, Off the back of the first test, when we were like, what are we doing here? Yeah. These guys are so good. How could we even have dreamt that we were going to be good enough to beat these guys? And then it turned into hope, when we beat them, well, maybe we could just do. And then that third test, the other guys had gone home. They had been able to commit to the first two tests. We couldn't commit to the third. And you and I had done a good week together and driving around. And then the final whistle, just how weird it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, can we rewind a little bit there, though? Because I want to talk about when we first got to the stadium. So we got there, we're in like the underbelly underneath the stands and stuff like that. And you said to me, right, I'll go get the seats, you go get beer, because we were running quite tight, if I remember rightly, before the game was kicking off. So I went and got like 4 beers or something. It didn't take long, but by the time I came back, you'd made friends with the people to our left, the people to our right, 2 rows in front and 3 rows behind. And it just shows the difference between us, actually, because all I wanted to do was watch the game. Yeah. It's the most intense game, and I just wanted to watch it, and you were busy having a social, basically.
Yeah. Well, then when you know who's around you, then you know who you can have banter with as well, and who to abuse. But it was incredible.
But you're right. The final whistle, it was just the most weird atmosphere and feeling that I've ever felt.
For both sides, it was just I can't really describe it, because it'd been such a build-up, and for nobody to have clinched the series, and the awkwardness of seeing both teams getting their picture taken in an environment where they just couldn't celebrate, because none of them were happy with that result. Yeah. It's almost like it should have gone to extra time, but it just didn't.
And they've changed that now, haven't they? I think they've said. I think they have. I think on the back of that, they've said that any drawn series in future will have extra time, because it was just so incredibly flat at the end, and it. I mean, it's a great series, but it felt strange.
Yeah, it needs to have a proper conclusion for sure, 100%. Yeah.
But let's rewind quickly back to Wellington, because we met a great rugby person down there in Wellington Clubhouse, and I think rugby clubs around the world have got somebody like this. And this is a guy called Bruce was his name, I think.
Yeah,
Bruce, who he welcomed us into the club. We parked up in their car park for about 4 or 5 nights, maybe in total. And it just felt like we were part of the club, and he was busy there doing all the kit and worked behind the bar. And
so to put this into context, we did hire the fanciest machine we possibly could. So we all had a double bed, and it was very comfortable. But Wellington had a sea of camper vans in the car park around the pitches and stuff, where you could pay fee to the club, and got to use the shower facilities. And it was really weird, having not played rugby for a few years, and then sitting in the changing rooms and talking to other people. They're like, all right, how you doing? And but it was incredible. It really brought all these different people together. There was the Scottish, the Welsh, the Irish, the English, all kind of bound together by the support of one team. But going back to Bruce, look, it is incredible to see the volunteer element of rugby, and I don't think it is exclusive to our sport, but I do think that the people in rugby, there's an understanding that the game cannot survive without the Bruces of this world, who literally do everything and don't get paid, and often they spend their own money. I think there was a story actually that one of the All Blacks, and I can't remember which one it was it was from one of the islands originally, and Bruce had actually adopted him as his son.
Yeah, via Fafita.
Okay, yeah, and so he took him into his. Not only was he volunteering and helping the club, he was adopting players into his family, and was their family, in the home away from home, as it were. So yeah, God bless people like Bruce, I say.
Yeah. So moving onwards now, then obviously you mentioned earlier you've been retired from playing for getting on for 10 years now. So but moved into the business world. So what kind of things have you learned from rugby that you've taken into business and have really helped you?
Well, so I had a funny old journey. I went to England to do a sports science degree, study at St Mary's in Twickenham. I remember my career guidance counsellor at school telling me that rugby would never get me anywhere, and I think every job I've ever had in my life has been related in some way to rugby or sport. But I end up, within just a few weeks of being in England, I ended up getting a contract with Harlequins. And they literally put a roof over my head, money in my pocket, and were it not for rugby, I wouldn't have been able to get through definitely my early days at university and continue to play. It would have meant I would have had to spend all my weekends working to pay for my fees, accommodation. So I always tell everyone rugby saved me. So anything I do for rugby nowadays is, it hasn't even nearly paid back what rugby's done for me. On the business front, then I went into sports video analysis, and I used to put the analysts into the football clubs, rugby clubs, cricket teams, like elite sports teams, and selling the technology as well. And I had a good 7 years of doing that, and really enjoyed it, and worked with 12 to 20 Premiership teams through supplying them with some sort of service or product. All the clubs, worked with nearly all of the Premiership teams in some way, shape or form, either as a supplier or putting people into their clubs. It was super interesting. Ended up kind of lecturing a little bit, advising a bit on sports video analysis. It was incredible, actually, because I learned an awful lot about the difference in the culture, because I spent a lot of time at the training grounds. And I really remember the difference in... So I remember going once to West Ham, and there was a really great guy there, who now works at Man United, a guy called Struthers, and he's head of strength and conditioning, and he is like just such a motivated and focused, amazing individual. And we had this meeting together. We were bouncing off each other. And he said, "Colm, I want to see more of this technology." He said, "But I have to get out and do a 45-minute session with the team. Can you come out with me and you can watch the training, and then we'll come back in and we'll do a bit more?" I said, "Yeah, that's great, no problem. I don't have another meeting afterwards. Let's do it." And I remember watching him blow the whistle to get the guys in, and these footballers kept talking to each other, and then he went, "Guys," and they were all like, still like, and he blew the whistle again. And then they eventually started to slowly walk into the centre of the pitch. And I was like, whoa, what is going on here? And then they went on to do a very good skills session and a fitness session and everything. But I remember just thinking, even at the lower levels of rugby, the coach blows the whistle and you run in. And there's an urgency, and there's an element of all buying into a culture, you know. And I always say about football, I love the sport. I love the sport of football. I know you're a Man United fan, and it is the best sport in the world by the amount of people involved with it, how many people it touches. But culturally, it's so different to rugby. There's a different attitude, especially from the players. Now I'm not a football basher. I'm not bashing the sport of football. I don't want to, but it started to get me to start to see how different sports and their culture behaved, and how things work behind the scenes. And it's quite important to have that kind of breadth of an insight to different businesses. Like, so for example, I then went into the world of sports. So I sold a business, and I went into the world of digital marketing, and started to see these different companies. And so one of the things I was involved with for a good while was digital marketing around human resources, and I used to run a think tank called the Direct Resourcing Think Tank with a couple of other businesses. We ran this think tank for about 5 years, and we would sit around a table with 10, 12, 15 people from, there'd be global head of HR or global head of people or talent or whatever. And it's nearly every topic of conversation was around culture and people, right, and how important your people were, and that culture. Great saying, like, culture eats strategy for breakfast every time. So you can have the best game plan, but if you don't have the right culture, you'll never be able to kind of achieve it. And what I've started to learn was that rugby had this very special culture, very special set of values. And so, also still at Esher, I decided to set up the Rugby Business Network, and as a not-for-profit. So I'd noticed that most different rugby clubs had one or two or three, big investors into the club that put their hand in their pocket, and I mean that from a junior level all the way up to Premiership teams. Mm. And particularly at the lower levels, after 3, 4, 5 years, they'd get cornered by their finance director or indeed their other half, who would say, "I know you love rugby, but honestly, what have you got back?" And they wouldn't be able to cost justify what they have got back, because in most instances it wasn't sponsorship, it was patronage. Mm. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with patronage as long as you recognise that it is patronage, and you are giving something to a good cause, which is great. But these people needed to be able to continue to do it, and I hated seeing them wanting to put their money in, but having to talk to non-rugby people to try and explain to them the values and the culture, and it not really coming across, and they couldn't really understand why it was good for the community, or so non-rugby people didn't really get it, didn't understand why they were different. It's funny actually. One of our strap lines for the Rugby Business Network is it's what we have in common that makes us different. Right. And I definitely think that's true of rugby people.
So do you think the non-rugby people didn't get it because they didn't come from that rugby culture?
Yeah.
Purely, or any other reasons?
Well, I think there was a very pragmatic kind of, okay, you're putting money into the club and we're not getting anything back. Yeah. In terms of bucks, in terms of money, eyeballs, at the lower levels. So there's a great story about one of the guys at Esher, and he was with his best pals having a pint of Guinness, leaning on the hoarding, and one of the chaps he was with said, "Oh," he said, "So I've just noticed something on the other side of the pitch there." He said, "There's a company called, let's call them ABC, and he said they do the same thing as you do." And he turned around and he said, "What are you talking about, mate?" He said, "That's my company. I've been paying like $5,000 for that piece of hoarding for the last 10 years. "Oh, is that you?" "Oh, I didn't even realise." And so the point was that he had actually never got any return from putting the piece of hoarding there, but his benefit really was through all of the people that he'd met, the friendships that he'd made. Mm-hmm. The value in the club is in the interactions with the people that are there. So I started to see at different clubs that there were really serious senior level business people, from multinationals all the way down to incredibly successful small business owners. And there could be a guy or a lady stood on the touchlines of the under-14s watching their son or daughter play, and they wouldn't know that somebody who they could do a very, very big amount of business with is actually on the touchlines of the next pitch. Yeah. Watching the under-18s play. Or he's even playing for the vets or some way involved with the club. So there are these incredible people with these values of rugby, and they find it so much easier to work with each other because they've got it's intrinsically kind of built into their DNA, to behave in a certain way and to act in things like honesty and integrity and and sense of humour, and they don't take themselves as seriously, and they're able to take a lot more abuse. So there are just amazing people who were involved with the sport of rugby, and so what I also realised though, it's not that cool to talk shop on the touchlines of the under-16s on a Saturday or a Sunday.
Yeah, in fact, I'm sure a lot of people don't want to do that specifically. No.
Right? Yeah. Myself included. I realized that they needed a different environment. So I thought, actually, wouldn't it be cool if I could put all these people in the same room, in a business environment, in an office environment, or in the city somewhere, where it's easy for them to get to work, and they were able to get together and help each other. And if they helped each other and they did a deal with each other, then the next time they get cornered by their finance director or someone in their family that says, why are you putting the money in? They could actually not only have the kind of values and community and corporate social responsibility part, but they could also have the return on investment in dollars. They might have found a cheaper supplier, or they might have got new customers, or they might have hired people without having to get a recruitment consultant. There's some amazing people in rugby that you can hire who are looking for jobs, but there isn't always the way of communicating with each other for those opportunities to happen. So I started the Rugby Business Network. Our first event was actually, even though the dream was to have in the city, our first event was in Esher.
Right.
And it was very funny. Like Dave Sleman, one of your previous guests.
Slem has been on the pod, yeah.
Yeah, he's been on the pod. And so Slem was our captain. He's an absolute legend. Great guy. And I'll never forget our first session, because it must have been like 15 or 20 people, and we pulled circles around in a circle and sat around them and started talking. And we all started laughing because we realized it was more like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And we were just like, well, what is networking in rugby? Like how does this actually work?
Yeah.
And so our first session just actually turned into, this is who I am, and this is what I'm looking to do, but actually this is what networking should be like in the future. So that was the kind of the first session that said, well, we should be standing up.
Right.
And we probably shouldn't be in the rugby club, because I'm looking at that stool, and I was stood up there on Saturday night with my top off and a neck and a pint of beer, and people can't disconnect, the fun of the clubhouse. As soon as they go back in, it's kind of like the little kid inside them is like, oh, this is a fun space, where actually we still have fun at Rugby Business Network networking events, but we try and put it into a professional environment. And then it kind of went on from there. I set up this LinkedIn group, and people from around the world, I just started approaching me. People in Australia. There was a woman in Llanelli who was she was what you describe as a rugby mum. And she contacted me and said, "Is this just for rugby players?" And I'm not really an ex-player, but I love what the whole concept is about. And I remember this was one chap from Cambridge who was on the thread of the chat on the main group saying, no, it should be for proper rugby chaps. Right. And I said, no, I'm not sure about that. I said, because if there were no rugby mums, there'd be no rugby players. And so they both did an event, and I think the guy in Cambridge got 20 to his event, and the lady down in Llanelli got something like 150 to hers.
Yeah, right, nice.
So it was, and that was an example of having the rugby mindset, the rugby values, and just so the whole idea behind the Rugby Business Network, and still is this day, connecting senior business people with a passion for rugby, so that they can help each other, and then they can put back into the rugby community in a sustainable way. So so that was where it all kind of came from.
Sounds like a good thing.
Yeah. It was never, I know it sounds weird, but there was never like a business plan, or it was never set up to be a business. It was set up to be just a good thing to bring people together. Yeah. I spent a lot of my own money over the last decade, just keeping the whole thing going. We've had amazing sponsors who've come in as well and just said, look, we like what you're doing. We want to help. We've had like brands like HSBC and Salesforce and Virgin Atlantic have helped us, and Etihad and Maserati and Marriott, and we've had just like I'm probably of course I'm missing lots of people's names off the list, but I'm trying to demonstrate is that there's a good understanding that it's a good thing to do to bring like-minded people together, and generally when you do that, good things happen. Yeah. So we have one kind of mantra at the Rugby Business Network, which is around people having to ask, how can I help you? So, I don't know, have you ever been to a networking event yourself?
No, I haven't actually.
Really?
No,
okay.
I don't think I have.
Oh, that's interesting. So, I hadn't really been to many networking events, but the ones that I was at before, it was very, I don't know, it was almost the ones that they weren't related to sport, and they were very much like, they're quite aggressive, There were people like very much like, what can you do to help me? And I didn't like it, so switching the play a bit and kind of saying, actually, if everyone goes into a room and asks, how can I help you? And they mean it, then everybody's going to walk out of that room thinking, I just walked into a room and everyone tried to help me. Isn't that a great place to be?
Yeah, for sure.
And if somebody asks you, how can I help you? You have to tell them what you do anyway. So everyone gets to the same place,
Just down a much nicer road.
Yeah, exactly. And so our format has always been, there's always a host, there's usually a sponsor as well, and they'll get to explain and talk a little bit about, their business. We try not to make it a pitch. We say to them, look, you are the best at what you do in this space, or one of the best at least. Tell us what's happening, educate this room, inspire the room. And when they do that, just people can't get enough of them. Over the years, we've had, I remember one famous ex-England and Premiership player, who I won't name, really nice fella, and he had a bit of a lack of confidence in terms of, I told him he should be the business speaker. He said, yeah, but I've only been in the company for less than a year, and we've got the world's top expert. And I said, is he a rugby guy? He's like, no. I said, does he know anything about rugby? No, but he knows everything about our particular area of expertise. And I remember we had this event, I think it was at Red Bull actually, and I think David Flatman and Tom Shanklin and Nick Easter were the guests, and as you can imagine, they're obviously quite witty chaps, and the abuse that they gave about the previous speaker negated anything that he had to say, because he went on for way too long. It was a massive pitch, and through their whole talk they kept referring to this other guy, and it would have been just so much better had the rugby player who was associated with that particular company just stood up and been authentic and been himself, because he could have spent 2 minutes talking and it would have been more impactful than the other guy talking for 20 minutes. So it really is. There's a great saying in rugby, which is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so I think that's one of the things that we want to get across in our events, is that this person shares your values. They're a rugby person like you, so you should listen to them. So, but there's always a rugby charity. We got 14 different rugby related charities, and they're all on the site, all equally amazing, and a lot of people just don't know about them. So we want everyone to put back into the rugby community. So if somebody isn't associated with a club anymore, which often happens, I've got lots of previous clubs, but I wouldn't say that I have, I don't think I'm a member of my local rugby club at the moment, right? And yet I spend so much time helping different kind of rugby charities.
Yeah, you're still very much involved in the sport.
Yeah.
Just not necessarily directly.
Yeah. So so the point is that people should put back in, but they don't always have an obvious avenue. So if you put that obvious avenue of putting back in front of them, then they often take it.
Yeah.
So we have amazing stories of the charities. I always say to them, don't shake the tin, inspire the room. And if you just tell the stories about the people you're helping, I've honestly, this is not an exaggeration, I've seen dozens and dozens of grown people cry, shedding a tear, listening to the stories from the rugby charities and who they help. And they massively overshadow the other speakers, the top business speakers and top rugby speakers in the world. And, it makes us realise why we're there together, helping each other. Yeah, we want to make a few bucks, we want people, or save some money or help each other in business, but what we're really doing is we're trying to come together to generally help the rugby community to be sustainable. And then obviously as you roll in the big name speakers, what we try and do is not do the same kind of interviews that they've done 100 times over, and tales from the back of the bus, and all the backslapping jokes and the way.
So what kind of things do you do? What do you ask in those interviews, or what kind of things do you try and get into?
Well, I think so. A good example would be, we had a World Cup winner not so long ago, and we started the interview by saying, look, everyone knows who you were in your heyday, but who are you today? Yeah, who are you to your family? Who are you to your friends? And I think that's the person that the people want to get to know, because they see all the same stuff on the TV all the time. And a lot of guys get, especially the guys who work in the media limelight, they're so polished. They're used to having the kind of standard answers in the locker. So I think it's understanding, like, you get under the skin of what made those people as driven and as successful as they have been. Like, we've had, and I've been so blessed really to have, so people like, I'll give you an example, like Dylan Hartley, talking about how driven, he has been, and linking it back to his parents. And we do rugby league as well, and Jamie Peacock, same thing. His work rate and his work ethic came from his parents, and it seems to be there's a great trend, in terms of, a lot of the best people. It didn't just happen by accident, they were surrounded by people that were a really positive influence to them. Yeah. Chris Robshaw, he talks about the women in his life. He had female role models who just inspired him to be everything that he is, today. And obviously a great human being as well. Really nice fella. So I love kind of peeling back the onion a bit and kind of saying, well, look, we know that you're an amazing player. We know that you're an inspirational leader, but you didn't come out of the box like that. Yeah. So what were the kind of moments in your life or milestones that kind of got you to there? Yeah. And then those lessons in kind of leadership, communication, teamwork, they're all applicable to business, because every business is as good as the people that are in it, and the effectiveness of those people is just like the effectiveness of teams. You can have a whole team of the best individuals, but if they don't work together, they're not going to win. Funny enough, one of our unofficial rules of the Rugby Business Network is the no dickhead rule. Right. And we stole that one from the Legacy book. It was written about the All Blacks, and it was one of their off the field rules. So what they're saying is you can be the best fly half or best prop in the world, and you could be Superman, but if you don't respect yourself, the fans, your opposition, the people you work with, there's no place for you in I was going to say the Rugby Business, but it's true, the All Blacks. True too. So we joke about it, but actually it's kind of joking, not joking. So what we say to people is, if you find somebody, so this people say, well, how do you determine who's a dickhead? And I say, well, it's quite simple. It's very possible for two people not to get along. That just happens all the time. It's just life. But at the end of the night, if there's more than one person coming up to us saying, who was that dickhead? Then the chances are that they are. And it really is just being a good, like our coach, Mike Smith, he always talked about being a good human being. Yeah. And he always used to say, being a good rugby player starts with being a good human being. And I'll never forget, we were on tour in Italy, and he made everyone come down to the bus. So we'd come off the back of a really tough day training, and I was the last person off the bus, and I was carrying like a bin bag of rubbish or whatever. And then he looked down the bus and saw that there was rubbish everywhere, and he was like, turned to somebody, I can't remember, he might have been Slem, and he said Slem was just there, and he was unpacking the bus. But the loads of guys had left without tidying up. So he said, get everybody back down here now. And he stood us around the bus, and he started to say, look, never mind playing rugby. It's just not a good thing to do to let these things slip in your life. Because if you let the small things slip off the field, you'll let small things slip on the field. And if everybody lets one small thing slip, that's another 15 penalties in a game. And there were just so many cool little lessons like that, about just being a nice person, following through on your word, doing what you say you're going to do. Humility is obviously a big theme, because although the game needs big personalities, but even the ones who, from my experience, anyone who pretends to be, having bags of confidence and all the rest of it. They do have humility. You know, the rugby doesn't allow you to be arrogant or bigger than the game or bigger than the team.
Yeah, you've got enough teammates to knock that out of you for sure, haven't you?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so what's the future for the Rugby Business Network? How many kind of events are you hoping to put on in the coming years?
Well, look, we've had events in 60 cities across the world. We have the world's largest LinkedIn group associated with rugby. We've split the events down into two different types of events. The stand-up networking events, which are mostly targeted at small to medium-sized business owners. And then we have private dining events where we might put 10 global CEOs or C-level executives around a table. And they're funded by sponsors who are also the business speakers. So the money comes from the sponsors, you know, but without them, just like a rugby club, really, it's kind of ironic, isn't it? That, just like a rugby club, the Rugby Business Network cannot survive without the same people and the same mindset that the rugby community depends on. But we have quite a clear strategy that we want to target the top 15 cities, rugby cities in the world, and have regular private dining events. So we're looking to do 2 private dining events a week in the top 15 cities in the world. That's our goal to achieve over the next 3 years. Our goal in the next 18 months is to have 8 cities doing 2 events a week, and then running our stand-up networking events as well separately to that. We have 3 kind of main assets, I suppose, and that is the 2 different types of events and the LinkedIn group.
Right.
We have played around with creating technology for connecting people, but there's so many great platforms already there. There's a big argument for us to say, well, why are we going to try and take them off the platforms where they already are, where there's great content already, like places like LinkedIn.
Yeah, just leverage that instead.
Exactly.
Right.
And funny enough, LinkedIn have actually hosted our events as well. Right. So Kenny Logan spoke at one of our events at LinkedIn. So this is a great example. And I don't know if you know, but Kenny Logan has dyslexia, and he talked about having to overcome his challenges with dyslexia. And I remember one of the guys, he was a younger guy. He was working at EY, and he brought his brother along. And his brother was working for another big kind of consultancy, and they're like 2 lads in their mid-20s, doing really well, taking on the world, and they just looked bulletproof. These 2 guys, they were just like lovely fellas. They're playing rugby, and I remember at the end of the evening, this guy, the younger brother, came up to me and he said, "Look," he said, "I want to say thank you." He said, "Because I've been totally inspired tonight by what Kenny Logan has talked about." There's a job that came up at work, a really big job running a big geographical area. And because of my dyslexia, I was lacking confidence that I would make mistakes and I wouldn't be able to actually go for this job. He said, having listened to Kenny and looked at everything that he's achieved, and Kenny gave an amazing presentation around how his business had organised sponsorship through Microsoft, and they'd done this around the Lions, and they'd done this amazing project. And this guy just said, "I'm going for that job tomorrow." And the fact that guy, who lacked confidence, came to an event and walked away with that.
Yeah.
That was enough for me. That was it. Every bit of work and effort that had gone into making that event work was worth it for that bit of feedback.
That one bit of result, yeah.
Yeah. And to see, but the other bits to kind of give you the hairs in the back of the neck are like people helping the charities, and stepping up. What was really interesting, we had an event a few months ago in Johannesburg, and we had Cornet Krieger speaking, and he was awesome. And he was an Absa Bank, and Salesforce and one of their resellers, Cloudsmiths, were the sponsors. And the School of Hard Knocks were the charity partner, and they were so inspirational that the company that sponsored the event stepped up and put nearly as much money as they'd put sponsoring the Rugby Business Network event into the charity there and then on the night.
That's amazing. Double down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like they were the ones that made the whole night happen. There was 150 other people in the room to kind of to donate, but like they said that they were inspired. So and now they're a charity partner of School of Hard Knocks, helping the poorest, most underprivileged kids in Cape Town and Joburg kind of get out of the situation that they're in.
Brilliant. So, is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of rugby or the Rugby Business Network before we move on to the Rugger Law Bore section?
No, I'm just. It's always just good to talk to you. I'm happy to be involved at this early stage. I think the Amateur Rugby Podcast is a great idea. You are a great person for getting around and travelling and experiencing things and meeting people. So I think you're going to do really well. I think. I know. So it seems like a weird thing to say. There's so many people in the world who are needy or in need, not needy. Because I know a few needy people. We actually had some teammates. We probably know the guy's name. He's very needy, but we won't mention him on this pod. But I'm talking about in need, people in need.
Yeah. It's a difference.
Yeah, it's a difference. By the way, for the audience, that is a reference to he's needy when it comes to women. And he scares them all off because he's so needy. But anyway, the point is, we all think about people who are in need, but there seems to be an ongoing thing that happens where people at rugby clubs get a sponsor on board who is normally a bloody nice person, and then as soon as they're on board, they forget to be grateful. And they forget to look after that person, and they forget to ask that person, well, how can we help you? And then after 2 or 3 years, that person disappears. So what I would say is business leaders and owners didn't wake up or they were not born in a suit or born successful. They became successful, and they came, most of them, from the same place as we all have done. And they are rugby people like you and I. So I think the rugby world and the rugby community needs to look at these business leaders and talk to them and say, what do you need? How can we help you? Because you might think, well, what could I ever add to these people? But a great example would be in our first ever Rugby Business Network event, an 18-year-old guy that was there looking for a job was able to introduce his father, who was the CEO of a global multinational, to a guy who had a subcontractor company. And so it was the 18-year-old who was able to add the most value to anyone else that was in that room that day. So we can all help each other. So I know it's all in our instincts to help the most in need, the poorest or the most underprivileged people. And let's keep helping them 1,000,000%. But let's make sure that we look at the people who are putting their money and their brand and their time and their resources into the sport and treat them like your most precious guest in your house, because they have as big a part to play in keeping this whole dream alive that we all get to enjoy. So that's what I would ask you to do. To think about the business leader and what they want. And put a bit of time into them.
Yeah,
even the old alacadoos at the bar. If they're putting their time, their money, or even if it's someone like Bruce in New Zealand and they're putting their energy in, give back to them. Don't just take. Be a giver.
Yes, good man. I couldn't agree more. But with that being said, it's time to move on to the Rugger Law Ball question now.
Whoa, here we go.
How would you rate your knowledge of the rugby laws?
Oh gosh, I've been out of it for. I think I struggled with the laws when I was playing. Never mind now. So yeah. But hit me. I'll give it a go.
Okay, so this is just a bit of fun, trying to improve the law knowledge around the game. With that in mind, Colm Hannon, it's time to find out if you are a Rugger Law Ball.
Sir, are you sure that's correct?
Colm, your question is, a scrum is set and the scrum half puts the ball into the scrum. The hooker strikes the ball backwards with his foot before it hits the ground. Is it A, play on, or B, a free kick to the team that didn't put the ball into the scrum?
I would say free kick.
For what reason?
I don't really have a reason. It's just I've only ever seen the ball hit the ground first. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right.
Oh, okay.
It is actually a law of the game. So, Colm Hannon, you are a rugger law.
Hey! Bingo.
The ball must hit the ground after it's been put in by the scrum half.
I do have to say, I'm so annoyed with this new putting in, how just one-sided it is.
Yeah.
You know, like, maybe it makes the scrum safer, but it definitely doesn't make it more, it makes it less of a competition.
Yeah, what they've said now is the scrum half, I'm not sure of the exact law wording, but they can stand closer to their own hooker, essentially. I mean, it still looks like the ball's going in, not straight even then. But, I mean, it is designed to try and make the scrum safer.
Yeah. And, well, listen, if it stops one person from breaking their neck, you know, then that's a great thing. But, you know, there is something nice about winning a ball against the head. You know, I was
with a clean strike, right? With a proper
So there's just we had Simon Elkinson, who was our fitness strength and conditioning coach, a hooker at St Mary's. I played with him at St Mary's and at Esher. He split London Irish as well. Ireland underage player, really good hooker, and we were playing in this. I think it only ever happened once or twice, but it was like a European University Cup. So like the best,
amazing.
The best universities in I think it was like 97 or 8 or something like that. And anyway, we were playing against University College Cork, and Jerry Flannery, who went on to play for Ireland, was the hooker. Who's an amazing hooker. The poor guy was in, you know, not the best scrum, and the scrum was going backwards. We were down by, I can't remember what we had to. I can't remember what we had to win by, but we had to get in. We had to get into their half to score. Yes. So we needed 3, I think. So we needed to generate the drop goal. So we kept opting for the scrum and kept pushing them back each time. And we must have pushed this scrum back maybe 40 metres in total. And now was the scrum to line up for the drop goal. And as our scrum half put the ball in, somehow, going backwards, he put his body safety, on this... the total disregard, and Jerry Flannery managed to hook the ball against the head going backwards at the fastest rate you've ever seen, and they got the ball out and they kicked it over the line, and we got knocked out of the semi-final of the University Cup. And poor old Elko, our friend, he will to this day say that it was the scrum half, Mark Percival, who put it in the wrong way, and Percy will always say that it was Elko that messed up the hook. But actually, on reflection of something like that, you don't want someone like Jerry Flannery today putting himself in a position where he could literally, break his back.
Yeah, I've seen hookers do all kinds of crazy stuff, and I think the scrum's a good contest at the moment, and it seems pretty safe. We're getting a lot of completed scrums, so it's in a pretty good place, I think. Okay, next question in the quickfire questions. What is your favourite bit of stash that you've ever received?
Well, I would say when Saracens were really, really, really stuck, I went on loan for a couple of 6-week stints with them, and I remember turning up there, and the Saracen stash I got was absolutely incredible at the time. I was never one of these guys to keep wearing my stash afterwards at my next club if I could at all, and so I remember looking out. I was home one Christmas and looking out in the back field and looking at my dad with the sheepdog, and he was wearing my Saracens waterproof gear. It was amazing. So best stash ever. Kept my dad dry in the hills of Galway for years. So thank you, Saracens. Yeah.
That's a good answer. Okay, and what is your favourite kit of all time? It can be any team, any era.
I was really lucky. I got to play in the intervarsity match in South Africa for Potchefstroom against Free State University. They're called Kofsies or Shimlas, also in South Africa, and the whole university was given basically the week off leading up to this. There were bands been playing during the week, and it was just an incredible atmosphere. And yeah, I have to say, playing for Potchefstroom or the Puck as they were called over there, that was my all-time favourite stash, and it meant so much. I've still got a picture of the sun-dried grass, and also kind of playing rugby against each other. And actually, there was a live band playing on each touchline. So each university had a full band with full speaker systems. And I'll never forget just how hard it was to hear the line-out calls. So we actually had to have signals. So it was incredible.
Amazing. Very different over there. And do you have a current stash crush? So any kit that's out at the moment that you might have seen for the World Cup or the new Premiership kits, or if there's not a favourite one, maybe one that you think's horrific?
Yeah, no, my favourite stash and favourite kind of concept is the Barbarians, and the Barbarians are a big favourite of the Rugby Business Network as well, because they are the only rugby team, as far as I can tell, who every person from anywhere in the world can support together. So the Barbarians brings people together, and so you can see people wear that kit, that jersey anywhere in the world, and they raise such an amazing amount of money and do such cool things for charities. So yeah, the Barbarians all the way.
Nice, amazing, mate. Well, that brings us to an end.
Yeah.
It's been a real pleasure, mate. Thank you so much for coming on, and it's been great to chat to you. If people want to get a hold of you to learn out stuff about you or the Rugby Business Network, how might they do that?
Just therugbybusinessnetwork.com. By all means, join the LinkedIn group. So you just search for the Rugby Business Network under groups on LinkedIn. You can follow us on Twitter at RugBizNetwork, and anybody who wants to email me, my email's I think it's on the site, but it's Colm, COLM at therugbybusinessnetwork.com. And and whenever I speak to anybody, we always ask the same question of each other. How can I help you? And then good things tend to happen.
Perfect, guys. I'll link all that up in the show notes below, so you got access to that. And thank you very much.
You're welcome, and good luck with the podcast.
Thanks, buddy.
Cheers.
Thanks very much again to Colm for the interview and your amazing hospitality. It took me a good few days to recover. I've only ever heard good things about the Rugby Business Network, so please have a look at the links in the show notes, attend an event, and see how you can help people. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you could like, comment, share, and subscribe. But what I'd really like is if you mention it to someone in person the next time you're down your local rugby club. I'll be back with you next week, where my guest will be James Griffiths. Griff was my captain at Old Colfians as we entered the brave world of the National Leagues for the first time. Make sure to tune in next week for our wide-ranging chat. Okay, I need to get back to this cruise. The cocktails at the poolside bar aren't going to drink themselves. So, until next week, get out and play.